Alright, after Antarctica, we go back to Ushuaia, then up to Chile, and then across the Pacific. And across the Pacific.
To the middle of nowhere.
To a little island.
Called Rapa Nui. Also known as
Easter Island.
The home of the Moai, or those big heads.
Which weren't really heads. They were bus, basically. They went down to the belly, really.
Mm-hmm.
But most people know them as the heads, because that's the iconic one.
That's the oldest one.
So it's a little island out in the middle of nowhere.
About 3,000 full-time residents and about 28 miles across.
The main trade is tourism. The whole island is a national park.
And it is very limited on the number of tourists that it can have at any one time.
Along with, you cannot actually migrate to there, because unless you were originally there, you can't go back. So it is volcanic. Lots of volcanic rock. Fencing. And that's what they did the Moai out of. And there's one that didn't make it to its standing place. And then there's also the rush hour. Even though they have some volcanic fences, there's not a lot of fence.
Yeah.
They don't keep track of their animals very well. They're all tagged. But the Moai were set up on these platforms, which have degraded.
Called Ahu. Ahu.
So they were eventually all pushed down on their faces. Nobody really knows why. And they, in the middle of nowhere, they still seem to have netting that pushes up on their shoulder. And trash. It looks like they still get it from the rest of us. Now we're off to
Tongariki. It is the iconic
setup of the Moai.
Yeah, and as Greg said, the Moai were pushed over. So this is a reconstruction of how the Moai would have been.
They are not finished. They would have been painted and had eyes.
And they're basically tributes to the elders and the ancestors. And
sort of commissioned artwork to represent their elders and the wisest.
In respect for their wisdom.
And the little hat there is not a hat, it's a top knot, a hair top knot.
And a separate rock.
Yeah. And then we have another rush hour of horses. They'll have owners, but they don't really corral them. And there is another...
This is an Ahu.
That has not been reconstructed. And another one out there. You see the top knots.
And this the Ahus are built much like the Inca walls, so there was some cross-pollination of cultures, they think, from way back when.
So they would build these Ahus and set the Moai on top of them, and the Moai had this magic in them, basically. And then off we go to the crater on the other side of the island, which was a huge crater and filled with water. We're told this is not seawater, this is fresh water.
Rain catchment when you get it.
So all of that is catching the rain, and it's kind of a grassy swamp at the bottom. There was no stairs going down there. We did not go down. you did go down, you probably wouldn't get back up.
Yeah, steep sides.
So we took a walk around it, and it was hard to see part of the way because whatever this bush is was growing up a bit.
But there is a trail.
Hopefully we don't fall in.
Yeah, but it really windy. Had to take the hats off because they would blow off.
Little bees were still around. And we walked out to the point where they did the Birdman competitions, which was after the Moai rain. And the Birdman was a competition to go out to the furthest island and get an egg and come back, which was all swimming, getting out there and coming back.
About 3 miles one way.
2 to 3 days to do that. And they lived in these little huts while they were training to go out there. And who came back with the egg first got to be the leader of the island for a year, and their village reigned supreme, and they got their likeness carved in rocks.
Petroglyphs.
So swimming 3 miles out and back got you to be leader and your likeness in a rock. Okay, going back to the quarry where they actually did the Moai. They carved these things out of the side of the crater, brought them down, put them sort of in pits to finish some of the carving before they walked them to the pedestal and finished the carving. But this is why they look more like heads, is because they get buried to do some of the detail work. But they were carved up here on the side of the crater as the quarry and brought down. And then they walked them all over the islands. Yes, walked. Check out the little video up in the corner. And you can see some of the places where they quarried out, and there are still some laying there, standing there, ready to be finished off and brought down, which is never going to happen. Look close, you can see one of the biggest ones they've ever seen. Nobody knows how they'd actually get that one out of there. And this overlooked
Tongariki. But they walked him to the other end of the island as well, so 28 miles away.
Looked amazing just to get him down to there.
And there were a lot that didn't make it to their final resting places.
Yeah, we did a hike along the trail, and you see one or two falling down. They break something, they just leave it there and start again. You can't really fix them. And then they had some petroglyphs in the rocks in other places.
Mainly to tell others where good fishing was.
Yeah. Polynesian type.
This set of moai
Were the only moai that were
facing outward.
the ocean.
Yeah.
All the rest were facing inward, towards the villages. Because they were, you wake up in the morning, you go out and you face your elders.
Hangaroa is the main town where the airport is, in the main settlement. but just outside of it is a Moai enclave that
Oh,
were there, but also one that actually had been finished,
the ice finished.
and the eyes were there. Of course, the lighting was terrible, and so it's hard to get pictures out, good pictures
But
of
it
it.
would also have been painted
Hmm.
in the likeness of the elder they were doing.
That they were honoring.
And then we did a sunrise at Tongariki,
Before getting on an airplane and flying all the way home.
which was a long ways. So if you like this kind of stuff, subscribe, like, comment, and we'll see you on our next adventure.
Thanks for watching.